Welcome to the guest docket, where Daryl and I are going to interview our special guest, Leanne Montgomery. Leanne, tell us a little bit more about yourself for the viewers.
Well, Mike, I was born and raised in Cincinnati, and though I spent a few years away, I returned here to raise a family. I have two children who I raised on my own after being widowed when they were very young. I'm very proud of them both. My daughter is a teacher, and my son is now halfway through law school. In terms of hobbies, I think Cincinnati's the perfect place for me. It's so accessible. It's got so many cultural and recreational opportunities. I enjoy the parks and the bike trails for hiking and biking and walking. Certainly enjoy all the theater that's available as well.
Awesome.
Professionally, one of the most rewarding service opportunities I'm currently engaged in is serving on the Board of Trustees of Quaker Heights Care Community, which is in Waynesville, Ohio. My practice is more in Hamilton, Claremont, Butler, and a little bit more in county, but it's certainly been a nice compliment to have that opportunity to learn more about the challenges that a retirement community faces in meeting the needs of their residents and all the many regulations that are out there.
Now, you indicated earlier, Leanne, you've been practicing for 14 years. What led you to the practice of law?
Well, Daryl, my own experience of having very outstanding legal counsel when I was widowed kind of spurred me on towards a second career choice that I was already considering. So I entered law school in 1996 thinking that I might dovetail my prior professional experience as a nutritionist with the practice of law. And to a large extent, I've done that in estate planning and elder law. I continue to work in counseling clients and their families, just as I had counseled very often chronically and terminally ill patients and their families. And again, I think my own experience appreciating the need for good life planning and good estate planning has helped me develop an empathy for working in the area that I do.
You know, our focus today is, of course, on elder law for the show. Maybe you could differentiate elder law versus estate planning for our viewers.
Well, they're not completely separate, certainly. And what I have found is building from estate planning is that I am putting in that extra piece of thinking down the road. How are the client's wishes, a married couple's wishes, going to work with sometimes conflicting goals of preserving their assets, but yet also making sure their long-term care needs are met. And I find that couples and individuals have different goals. Some of them say, it's important to me that I leave something to my children, and we work towards that goal. Sometimes I've got kids in the room who say, we don't want it, it's for you, Mom and Dad, and please use that to the extent you need it. And I'm always amazed that every single individual, every couple, every family is different in what they're looking for.
So I would assume that you have to treat each and every family or individual that walks in differently because they have differing interests. Sometimes the kids, yeah, Mom and Dad, this is all you, and unfortunately, I bet you also see on the other hand where sometimes the kids are having little undue influence on the parents.
Yeah, and you really need to be careful with that. And one thing that, just to backtrack a little, Daryl, your question, I think I always start in the same starting place of I need the same amount of information, the same types of information from you. But that conversation, sitting down, certainly with the client, whether that's an individual or a couple, and sometimes with their kids and sometimes not, really helps me determine what their specific interests are and concerns are.
As you're going down, the road, when does elder care planning become relevant?
Well, I think in my mind, it's relevant just about at any point to keep your eye on that ball. But I think I myself, as a baby boomer, aging along with the 76 million other baby boomers in this country, are all thinking about this. A lot of us right now are taking care of aging parents, or at least have concerns about aging parents. So the groups that I see that are really putting that into their plan are probably somewhere about 50 and up.
And as the senior gets older, when does again the idea of elder care planning start to become, I guess, an active issue? When they're switching to Medicare at 65, when they're older. And I'm just trying to see a little bit more of when it starts to become a big issue.
Well, Mike, that's a really good question. In my mind, too often it becomes an issue way too late in the process. It may be that they've been assuming all along, oh, my kids will take care of me. It's often not until that time that a spouse falls and breaks a hip, has a stroke, and the well spouse can no longer care for them, that suddenly they're really scrambling and thinking, oh my goodness, now we need care in a skilled nursing facility. I had no idea how much it cost, and I wish we'd planned for this sooner.
I deal with a lot of Social Security claimants in my practice, and I deal with a lot of individuals who are on Medicare. Do you deal with Medicare or Medicaid in your practice, one more than another?
I deal with pretty much all forms of insurance. And so when I talked before about gathering all that information, I want to know what people are currently using and currently may be options that may be available for them. So I think it's an unfortunate situation that those names are so close, Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare is our federal health insurance program. It's available to people over 65 who are legally blind, as you know, Daryl, those who are disabled, people with end-stage renal failure. But for purposes of our discussion, we're talking about the majority of Americans who become eligible for Medicare when they're 65. It's really dependent on whether you participated in the Social Security system. It's not dependent on your income, it's not dependent on your assets, and it's not dependent even if you have a particular medical need. Medicaid is an entirely different program, and I guess I'll first start by saying that certainly all individuals with Medicaid who are over 65 continue to have Medicare. So a lot of times you'll hear people with Medicare, they have a supplemental health insurance policy that they've purchased through one of the major companies, or they've gotten it through their company when they retired. That is a way to think about Medicaid as being a supplemental policy to Medicare. I think the biggest surprise for most people, and back to Mike's question about when do they start planning, is somewhere in their mind they've got an understanding that Medicare or maybe their supplemental health insurance policy will provide for nursing home care. It will not. There are really only two ways to pay for skilled nursing or assisted living, and one is private pay, supplementing with your own income, and the other is through the Medicaid program.
Great. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you having you on today.
Thank you, Mike and Daryl. It's been a pleasure being on the show today.